Welcome to my shop. This video is a build along for a shaker bench. Let's dive into the design before we start cutting any wood. This bench is based on a shaker design, but with a Windsor-style undercarriage that offers a strong yet elegant assembly. I will highlight some major dimensions here, but feel free to pause to take a closer look at my drawings. The seat is 48 inches long by 16 inches deep by 1 3/4 inch thick. The top of the seat is 18 inches off the floor. The crest rail is 3 inches wide and is 12 inches from the seat. Regarding the legs, we have rake and splay. Rake is the angle from front to back. Splay is the angle from side to side. The rake is 12 degrees for the front legs and 18 degrees for the rear legs. The splay of both the front and rear legs is 10 degrees. The angle of the back is called the slouch angle. This is 10 degrees. The leg to seat joinery is a 6-degree tapered through tenon that gets wedged. This final drawing shows the 5/8 inch diameter mortise locations for the legs and the back spindles. All the leg through mortises are drilled from the top of the seat, and the spindle mortises are drilled to a 1-inch depth. I also want to address the fact that this is not a beginner project. I have spent years learning and gaining experience on building chairs. My intent with this short video is to showcase my tools and techniques and also inspire you to get out to your shop and build something beautiful. Enough design chat, time to start making dust. I start any Windsor-style chair build with the seat. For this bench, I'm using poplar, which is more forgiving to shape and paints well. I need to break down this wide, rough-sawn board of 8/4 poplar into 3 smaller boards that get jointed flat, planed to thickness, and then ripped to width to produce lumber that is surfaced on 4 sides. Once all the milling is complete, it's time to glue up the boards into a solid piece. Next up are the legs. The legs and stretchers for this bench are maple. Traditionally, the legs of Windsor chairs are riven from green wood that ensures continuous straight grain all the way through for strength. I'm using kiln-dried lumber, so I must first make a cut parallel with the grain and then cut the blanks out according to that first cut. If the grain runs off the leg, it has the potential to fail later down the road. These legs will be turned on the lathe. To speed up the turning process, I remove the corners from the leg blanks with the table saw. While turning the legs, I use a story stick with a caliper to make sure all the legs are consistent. Here's a close-up shot of the leg tenon. The leg to seat joinery is a 6-degree tapered through tenon. This tenon first gets rough turned on the lathe by eye, but I make sure to keep it oversized. Then I take the leg to my shop-made tapered tenon cutter. It's basically a large pencil sharpener that matches my reamer. After the legs are turned, I move back to the seat blank. The blank is too wide for my planer, so I accomplish the final flattening the old-fashioned way with a sharp hand plane and elbow grease. This really only takes 5 to 10 minutes for both sides. To start the joinery through the seat, I drill 4 5/8 inch holes for the legs. I use a method and jig taught by Peter Galbert. It's fast, accurate, and does not require a lot of fancy tools. His book, Chairmaker's Notebook, goes into much more detail on this process. At this point in the build, I'm going to admit there are a lot of methods and techniques I don't cover. Otherwise, this video would be 10 hours long instead of 10 minutes. Once the holes are drilled through the seat, they need to be reamed to accept the 6-degree tapered leg tenon. I use 2 lasers to keep the reamer at the proper angles through this process. The lasers are aligned to sight lines that have been calculated based on the rake and splay of the legs. I take my time with this step and double check alignment multiple times by placing a leg into the reamed mortise. After the 4 legs are fit to the seat, I drill for the stretchers. Again, I use the lasers to align the drill for accurate mortises. The undercarriage will come together later in the process. Here I'm drilling for the spindles that connect the seat to the crest rail. I set up 2 lasers and use my hand drill with a 5/8 inch bit. The back spindles are white oak and similar to the legs need to have straight continuous grain all the way through. The spindles taper from 5/8 at the base to 3/8 at the top. They start as square stock, then are initially tapered on the joiner. I fine-tune the taper with the hand plane and spoke shave, taking the square piece to an octagon and then finally to a round. Once all the undercarriage joinery and spindles are finished, the fun task of shaping the seat can start. The first step is to make a cove cut with the table saw. This might look unorthodox, but it is a commonly taught technique on the table saw. There are 2 important aspects to making this cut on the saw. First, secure 2 fences to the saw with good clamps. I use 2x4s that have been jointed flat and square. You don't want any play in the workpiece as it moves across the blade. Secondly, only make small cuts with each pass. Be patient and remember with each pass the blade is removing an increased amount of wood because the diameter of the cove increases. It also helps to have a full thickness blade in the saw. After the cove cut, I need to taper from the front edge of the seat to the bottom of the cove. To accomplish this, I use a variety of tools such as this router table, a power planer, a hand plane, jigsaw, and belt sander. This process of bringing out the shape is fun and very satisfying. Once all the shaping is done and parts have been sanded, it's time for the glue up. Traditionally, hide glue is used on Windsor chairs. However, I'm using a thickened epoxy. It has a long open time and is very strong. This is a stressful process, and epoxy allows me to get everything assembled without having to race the glue curing. Once the glue is all cured, it's time to trim the legs to their final length. The finish for this bench is multi-tiered. First, I brush on 3 coats of dark green milk paint. After each coat, I sand lightly to knock down any texture. There are plenty of resources out there for mixing milk paint, so I'm not going to go into much depth here. After paint, I spray 3 to 4 light coats of blonde shellac. After I have a good shellac base, I spray tinted black shellac to darken and add depth. I stop spraying once I'm happy with the tint. Thanks for joining, and I hope you enjoyed watching my process to create this beautiful bench.